According to the latest information, starting from July 1st, 2025, adult internet users in the European Union will not be able to access popular platforms and websites such as TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook without the EU application. What is this about? Is it true? And what should one do in such a situation? Crypto Explain. Everything you need to know to stay safe. From this year, every adult internet user in the European Union will be required to use a new application to confirm their age. According to official information, the solution aims to more effectively protect minors from harmful content online. The initiators claim that adults will be able to confirm their age through the application without having to disclose personal data to online services. In the content of the published articles, we can read that the EU application will not be mandatory. But without it, access to many popular websites and applications may be significantly limited or impossible. So, we can understand it this way. It will not be mandatory as long as we don't use social media, YouTube or Instagram. However, if we want to use them, we won't have an alternative. Calling it non-mandatory simply sounds better from a marketing perspective. Another very important piece of information we learn is that the new application is intended only as a temporary solution, as it is eventually to be replaced by the EU Digital Identity Wallet, scheduled for implementation at the end of 2026. The Digital Identity Wallet is something like an electronic ID, which will represent us in all matters related to access to online services. Starting in 2026, without such a wallet, adult internet users will not have access to websites containing, among other things, content related to pornography, alcohol, and gambling. This also means a blockade on popular platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X, Pinterest, and Snapchat, and even on the LinkedIn service, which has a minimum age requirement of 16. The application is being developed by the companies Settlese and T-Systems, commissioned by the European Commission to implement such systems. The entire concept is being presented to us as something positive, intended to steer young people away from mobile phones, and indeed, the idea has good intentions. But there are also other consequences to introducing such a solution. And this includes, among other things, a very effective and full-scale censorship of other content that the European Union deems inconsistent with its policy, or simply considers problematic. Even if a platform is seen as acceptable today, like Platform X, where there is full freedom of speech, what will happen if the government in Europe changes and wants to slightly regulate freedom of expression? With a tool like the Digital Identity Wallet, one could simply click and block access to the entire platform for all people living in the Union under any pretext. And that is a very dangerous move for freedom. How did I come to this conclusion? Because already last year, the European Commission tried to do exactly that. But fortunately, it failed. Right now, you see on the screen an article about the unsuccessful attempt to block Platform X. Of course, there are many inappropriate places on the internet that children and even adults should not have access to, and the intention to limit such places is certainly valid. However, let's consider whether the method presented to us for achieving this goal is truly appropriate. History, both of Europe and every other continent, shows that seemingly small and cosmetic changes have often led to far more serious consequences. Censorship, initially subtle and harmless, has always shifted into something extreme and despotic, as demonstrated by both the First and Second World Wars. Initially, small taxes always grew into large ones. Raising the retirement age by just 1 year was never enough, and resulted in several additional years of work, added at long enough intervals that we no longer remembered the original promises. That's why I personally believe we should be much more critical in such matters and try to view everything from a broader perspective. What you now see on the screen, the unsuccessful attempt to block freedom of speech on Platform X, regardless of whether it was a good or bad idea, is an event from which the appropriate conclusions were drawn, preparations were made, and this is now the second attempt, which will ultimately yield a much more effective result, because it can be done more efficiently, better, and quietly. And we will be told it is for the good of our society. As a result, people may not realize in time, and it could be too late to protest. Additionally, the digital identity wallet is a perfect tool for complete surveillance of citizens, because through it, it will be known who is watching what and when. By knowing which websites we visit, what we pay for, and what our preferences are, it becomes very easy to control both entire societies and individual people. Such information is extremely valuable, and even now, you allow corporations to collect it every time you use a given service. Its terms and conditions include a clause about this consent, and each time you voluntarily agree to the collection of many types of information. That is why many applications and programs are free. That's simply how it works, and it has basically become the standard. Corporations trade such information among themselves because it is extremely valuable. For example, it helps tailor ads to your preferences, which allows companies to continuously increase their sales. Now imagine that all this data ends up in the hands of those in power on a continental scale. That's an enormous database of information offering countless possibilities. To sum up, is the idea of introducing a mandatory application to access the internet justified? In my opinion, it is not, because in exchange for the minor benefit of reducing the time children spend on their phones, we are giving away our freedom to the European Commission, whose appetite for new restrictions may grow over time. In such a scenario, unfortunately, there may not be much we can do. Even if everything seems fine right now and is properly regulated, we must not forget that politics is constantly changing, and that applies to both views and actions. Future leaders can, at any moment, take things a step further and take away more than just access to Instagram, especially since in recent years we have already seen examples of very dangerous ideas. There's a saying that you can't eat an elephant all at once, but you can eat it piece by piece. And that's exactly what is happening right now. Big changes in a short time provoke strong emotions and large-scale public reactions, while small, quiet, and unnoticed changes are simply ignored, even though the final effect is the same in both cases. Are hard times ahead for Europe? Will we be systematically restricted in this way? The best conclusions come from observing what is currently happening and thinking independently. I myself would like to hope that when it comes to social media restrictions, no one has bad intentions and that nothing harmful will happen. But unfortunately, I know the tendencies of politicians quite well, and I think I'd rather not live under illusions. And what do you think about this topic? Do you know a way to avoid all this chaos and remain anonymous? If you still don't fully understand how all of this works, I invite you to check out my course Cryptocurrency for Beginners, which you can find on the Udemy platform. Browse the list of topics covered and see which one will help you on your crypto journey. Good luck!